There is a moment, roughly 4 hours into a night crossing, when the flight deck goes completely silent and you can hear the airframe breathing around you. And somewhere behind that locked door, 30 rows back, someone is awake with a phone in their hands, typing the same question that millions of people type every single year. Is this actually safe? Today I'm answering the questions the internet asks most, with real numbers instead of reassurance. So let's get started. Start with the frame, because everything else hangs off it. Last year, airlines flew 38.7 million flights and recorded 51 accidents. That works out to one accident for every 759,646 departures. 10 years ago, there was one fatal accident for every 3.5 million flights. Today, it's one for every 5.6 million. Willie Walsh, who runs IATA, put it plainly. Flying is so safe that a single accident among nearly 40 million flights visibly moves the global data. Hold on to that, because most of what follows is the story of how that number got so small. Question 1, and it is the most searched of all of them. Can turbulence bring down a plane? The honest answer is that turbulence almost never breaks the aeroplane. It breaks the people inside it. American accident investigators found that turbulence injuries account for more than a third of all air carrier accidents in the United States, which makes it the single most common accident type in commercial aviation. Between 2009 and 2022, there were 163 serious turbulence injuries on U.S. carriers. 129 of them were crew. Roughly 8 out of every 10 severe injuries happen to cabin crew, for the simple reason that they are the ones standing in the aisle with a loaded trolley when the floor drops out from under them. The kind that hurts people isn't the storm you can see on radar. It's clear air turbulence. Invisible. Radar blind. It arrives out of a blue sky with no warning at all, and it accounts for around 65% of all turbulence injuries. In May of 2024, a Singapore Airlines 777 flew into it over Myanmar at cruise and diverted to Bangkok with the cabin wrecked. That is the version people are actually afraid of, and they're not wrong to take it seriously. So is the sky genuinely getting rougher? Paul Williams, an atmospheric scientist at the University of Reading, has spent years on exactly this question. His team's work found that at a typical point over the North Atlantic, the strongest category of clear air turbulence was 55% more frequent than it was in 1979. His projections suggest a doubling, possibly a tripling, of severe turbulence in the jet streams over the coming decades. Not everyone accepts the causal chain. Some meteorologists argue that attribution science isn't settled yet, and that the injury data over the last 15 years is noisier than the headlines make it look. Fair enough. But notice what nobody is arguing about. Almost every passenger seriously hurt in turbulence was not wearing a seatbelt. The debate is about the cause. The fix has never been in dispute. Question 2. What happens when lightning hits us? It happens more than you'd like to know. American weather authorities put it at 1 to 2 strikes per commercial aircraft per year, which means that if you fly regularly, you have almost certainly been aboard for one. The aeroplane is a Faraday cage. The current runs across the skin, spreads out, and leaves through little wire, static wicks on the trailing edges. Passengers get a flash, a bang, maybe a flicker in the cabin lights. And here's the part that surprises people. The aircraft often triggers the strike itself. Flying into a charged cloud sharpens the electric field around the airframe and helps complete the circuit. Afterwards, there's a mandatory inspection, which costs money and delays flights, which is one more reason we route around weather rather than through it. Question 3. Can it really fly on one engine? Yes, and the regulations are the proof. In 1953, twin-engine airliners were confined to within 60 minutes of a suitable runway, which effectively handed the oceans to 3- and 4-engine aircraft. On the 1st of February 1985, a TWA Boeing 767 flew Boston to Paris on 2 engines with regulatory blessing, and everything changed. By 1988, the limit had stretched to 180 minutes. Today, the Airbus A350 is certified to 370, more than 6 hours, about 2,500 nautical miles from the nearest runway on a single engine. That number is why a twin-engine jet can cross the Pacific. It isn't optimism. It's decades of engine reliability data, one shutdown at a time. Question 4, and it's the one that irritates pilots most. Doesn't the autopilot do everything now? Automatic landings account for somewhere between 1 and 3% of commercial landings. They're used in fog, not in wind, because the crosswind limits for an autoland are lower than what a trained human comfortably handles. Every takeoff you have ever experienced was flown by hand. And the profession genuinely argues about this. Some pilots believe automation is quietly eroding manual flying skill. Others point out that modern training is more demanding than it has ever been. What I can tell you is that in 2025, there wasn't a single loss of control in-flight accident anywhere in the world. Only the second time that has ever happened. Loss of control used to be the leading killer in this industry. Question 5. Is the air in here dirty? The regulator's answer is specific. Cabin air is roughly half fresh air bled from the engines and half recirculated air pushed through HEPA filters that capture 99.97% of particulates, and the entire volume of the cabin is exchanged every 2 to 3 minutes. That is a faster air change than the office you work in. The counter-argument is real, and it is unresolved. Fume events, where contamination reaches the cabin. Regulators have estimated somewhere between roughly 3 and 33 such events per million departures. Research is ongoing, and crew unions are pushing hard for better onboard detection. Both things are true at once. The air is extraordinarily clean, and the people who breathe it for a living still want better sensors. Question 6 is the one everyone asks with a smile. Why is the food so bad? Mostly, it isn't. You are. At cruise altitude, the humidity in the cabin falls to around 12%, which is drier than most deserts, and your nasal passages dry out within minutes. Smell does most of the heavy lifting and flavor, so when it fails, food goes flat. Sensitivity to salt and sugar can drop by up to 30%. Then add the noise. Researchers at Cornell found that 85 decibels of recorded cabin noise suppresses sweetness while actually intensifying umami, the savory taste, which explains the strangest habit in aviation. Tomato juice, loaded with glutamate, tastes better at altitude than it does on the ground. Lufthansa's passengers get through roughly 1.7 million litres of it every year, and a large share of them never touch the stuff at home. Question 7. Why do the lights go down and the shades go up? This one is not decoration, and it isn't about ambience. Certification rules require that any aircraft seating more than 44 passengers must be shown to evacuate everyone in 90 seconds, in darkness, with half the exits unusable. 90 seconds is roughly the window before a post-crash fire flashes over, so the number isn't arbitrary. Dim lights pre-adapt your eyes so you can see the floor path markings the instant everything else goes dark. Open shades let the crew look outside before they commit to a door, checking for fire, for debris, for an engine still turning. In Moscow in 2019, on Aeroflot 1492, people stopped to pull bags out of the overhead bins during an evacuation. More than 40 passengers died. That is what 90 seconds means. Question 8. The masks. They fall automatically when cabin altitude climbs past about 14,000 feet. There's no tank up there. Pulling the mask towards you fires a chemical generator, a canister of sodium chlorate and iron powder that gets hotter than 250 degrees Celsius and produces breathable oxygen for somewhere between 12 and 20 minutes. That sounds terrifyingly short until you understand what it's for. It only has to outlast the descent to 10,000 feet, where the outside air is breathable again. And at cruise, your time of useful consciousness is 15 to 30 seconds. Not 15 minutes. Seconds. That is the entire reason we tell you to fit your own mask before helping the child beside you. It isn't selfishness. It's arithmetic. None of this is finished, and I want to be honest about that rather than send you away with a clean ending. Reports of GPS jamming rose 67% last year compared with 2023, and spoofing incidents rose 193%. Runway environments and obstacles near runways contributed to 16% of accidents. Every one of the answers I've just given you exists because something went wrong first, was investigated, and was written into a rule that a pilot now follows without thinking. The seatbelt sign. The dimmed cabin. The mask over your own face first. Every one of them is somebody's accident, turned into a habit. So the next time you're 30 rows back at 3 in the morning with your phone in your hands, wondering whether any of this is really safe, here is the answer that took 100 years to earn. Flying didn't become safe by accident. It became safe by counting. Thanks very much for your time, and don't forget, a good pilot is always learning. If you want more of this, subscribe to the channel and like the video. There's a lot more coming.